like to welcome everyone to our Business at Breakfast series. Today we have a very interesting speaker. I'm sure you all enjoy her. We want to thank our breakfast host this morning, the Courtyard by Marriott. And of course, our sponsor today is Stefano and Johnson. We thank them. Randy's here, and I know you got a couple other folks here. Thank you for being here. Also, CityNet and Panera are series sponsors. This morning we have with us Lisa Sherrill. She is a senior management consultant. She's here to talk to us today about 3 steps to millennial integration. Lisa is a senior management consultant specializing in human behavior in the workplace. With over 7 years of professional experience examining the human mind and behavior at work, she has a proven track record providing facilitation, coaching, training, and consulting services that help leaders, business owners, and staff realize more of their business potential. Lisa holds a master's in psychology and certifications in pro-psy, change management, conflict management, business management, interpersonal, neurobiological, and brain-based leadership coaching. She's also pursuing her PhD studying the human mind at work. To learn more about her, visit her website at www.managementserviceswb.com. And she has passed out some of her business cards. If you did not get one, there's some extras on the back table. With that, please welcome Lisa Sherrill.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see such a wonderful group of people here. I'm beginning to wonder if my voice isn't going to be loud enough. Can you hear me in the back? Yep, no, sometimes, maybes. Okay, I will speak louder. Let's see how it goes. So before I go into jumping into millennial integration, I wanted to just give you a little bit of background about what a management consultant does, because that'll help sort of paint the picture for how I see millennial integration. So what does a management consultant do? Ultimately, what we do is we study the people side of business. Okay? So I look at things such as conflict resolution. I look at things as organizational change management. I look at things such as cultural integration management. Cultural integration management, guess where millennial integration is incorporated into? It's an aspect of cultural integration, right? We have our older generations. We've got my generation. We've got the baby boomer generation. These are different cultures raised differently. And then we have the millennial integration. So you see this cultural clash where you have different minds. How we were raised cultivates the brain in a different way. And so when you come together, we've been raised differently. We grew up differently with different cultural norms, et cetera. Bring that together, and you see this cultural clash. So we're going to talk about that today. Okay? Other things, other types of aspects of the business side or the people side of business, things like team building, team management, stress management, innovation management, customer service management. And we know, I'm assuming since you're here, that millennial integration touches on all of these. Okay? So also, I'll just add one part in this that I think will help paint the picture as well for today, is in the last 50 years, with the advent of technology, we've come a long way in terms of improving bottom line in our businesses with streamlining and automation using technology and machines. At the same time, we've produced infinite amount of information and resources on how to handle the people side of change. Yet guess what the research is now suggesting? While technology has helped us really improve the bottom dollar for automation and streamlining, where do you think the people side of business is standing in terms of bottom dollar improvements over the last 50 years? Plateaued, despite the resources. So there's some disconnect. Resources on the people side of change exploding exponentially, yet there's this plateau where we're not really seeing an improvement with regards to the bottom line impact. Why is that? Anyone want to take a guess? Don't worry, I won't bite you. Say again? That's a good insight. Tell me more.
Well, we're in healthcare, so the big crisis of the century is nursing and the nursing shortage, and that is where we're at. We're having a really hard time connecting with this new generation of nurses. Their needs and wants are completely different than they used to be, and so the people side of it it's a learning curve for all of us.
You nailed 2 pieces that are very important. Learning curve. And a lot of us struggle with how much patience and how much it takes to build that learning curve. It's so much easier to just take a technology and slap it in. That's so much quicker, right? But the development it takes, the learning curve it takes to actually understand and really realize how to manage people is a completely different ballpark. Okay? You mentioned something else as well, and connection. Connection. We're going to be touching on that as well. Connection is another one. Anyone else want to throw out some ideas on why we're seeing exponential resources but a plateau in terms of bottom dollar improvements?
Changed our communication technique, so we're doing it all electronically and not speaking and interacting with people.
The face-to-face. Now, if you heard in my little intro, I'm a brain nerd. I love studying the brain. I mean, that's basically my specialization, is I study the brain in interpersonal relationships, connections. And so what's happened is that we've kind of lost a bit of an edge on how to make that face-to-face. Okay? And so as a result, what's showing up is we're not able to, we need to be in face-to-face interpersonal relationships to cultivate a sense of aha moment, realized understanding. So instead of reading something in a book and regurgitating it, we need to have that realized understanding from within. The brain has to come up with it itself. And for that to happen, we need more of an interpersonal dynamic to show up. Okay? It has to be more than just reading it in a book. Okay? I was going to say one more thing and I forget. So we'll move on. Oh yeah, right. I'm a very, what do you call it, engaging presenter. I like to talk to you guys and find out what's in your heads and think, wrestle it around. But we're on a time limit, so I'm going to have to not do that, resist that. So what I just did before in terms of engaging you, I'm going to try and stop that until the end. So what I'll invite you to do, and I'll invite myself to do as well, is if you have any questions, write them down, hold off, and at the end, we're going to give 10 minutes, and then you can ask your questions. Okay? All right, so what are we going to talk about today? Millennial integration. So we're going to talk about 3 pieces. One, we're going to look at how the millennial brain works, okay, in comparison to how the baby boomer and the X-gen brains work, okay? And there's a reason why we're going to talk about it from the brain perspective. Okay? We're then going to talk about 3 really important concepts to support millennial integration. And you guys have already kind of touched on it. My hunch is if we came together as a group, and I facilitated it as opposed to presenting, you guys would probably come up with the same information that I've got in my slides. I think we sort of intuitively know. Okay? So I think I'll bring light to what you're already kind of sensing. You may not have words to articulate it, but my hunch is you've got it. All right, and then we're going to explore those concepts and then look at pragmatic, very easy things you can do, practical exercises you can do in the workplace. Okay? Okay, so let's talk about how the millennial brain works. So what I notice with millennial integration is a bit of a sensitive topic. The millennials in the room might be able to speak to this better than I can. But when I speak to millennials, what I hear is they feel unseen, unheard. There's hurt there. Okay? And yet, when I speak to leaders, I hear frustration and confusion. Okay? So what I like to do when I explore millennial integration is I like to go and sort of move past some of our biases and judgments we might have of ourselves and each other with regards to millennial integration and talk about it from a very pragmatic, objectified brain science perspective. If we can look at it from a scientific brain perspective, what happens is we can start to understand ourselves better, understand each other better, without some of the judgments and biases we can put, labels that we can put to ourselves and each other's. It's sometimes the labels and the judgments that we put that can taint things, and then what happens is we're not working with raw, real, accurate data. And so if we're not working with raw, real, accurate data, what happens? The solutions we provide are not going to be as effective. Okay? So that's where I take it, is from the brain science perspective. And what I notice is if we can take it from the brain science perspective, what shows up is, it's like, oh, you mean I'm not defective? You mean there's nothing wrong with me? You mean I just kind of have to do some of these little exercises to improve on things and give and take? It completely can change the dynamic and the perception of millennial integration to something that is a real challenge and is something that causes a lot of hurt and frustration to something that actually can be quite enjoyable. Okay? And we'll explain this as we go. Okay, so that's number one. So let's talk about the millennial brain. So the millennial brain developed differently than the baby boomer brain and the X-gen brain because of, oops, see, I'm going to just engage you guys. Okay. So the brain works like a muscle. You know, I am right-handed, so my right bicep is stronger than my left bicep, right? I work it more. It's the same with the brain. Okay? So the brain has all these subsystems and these parts. Depending on what I'm doing, depending on the experiences I'm having in life, certain parts of my brain are going to be worked really well. And if I'm not having certain experiences, then other parts of my brain aren't going to be worked very well. So I'm going to have underdeveloped parts of the brain and well-developed parts of the brain, or sometimes overdeveloped parts of the brain, okay? Depending on how my life has evolved and developed. Okay? So it's the exact same thing as a muscle. Now, all that means is like a muscle, you just work it and it starts to develop. It's just either being exercised or not exercised. So here's my question. What are some of the influences that the millennial generation have had that perhaps the other generations have not had that may have stimulated their brains in certain ways, exercised their brain in certain ways? Comparison because of social media. So you're actually bringing up two things here. Social media, which just in and of itself is going to stimulate certain parts of the brain in a certain way, exercise certain parts of the brain in a certain way that my generation never had, previous generation never had, and also social media. Now we're going to talk about that. I'm not going to go into detail right now, but we're going to talk about that one. It's a very important one on how that's going to alter how the brain thinks. So again, I don't think I mentioned this. So depending on how the brain develops, it's going to then, of course, alter how we see life, alter how we behave, and alter how we function. Okay? Now, anything else? What else?
Handheld technology.
Say again?
Handheld technology, communication via technology.
Handheld technology, yes. Carry it with you all the time. You got it in your pocket. That's another really good one. We're going to talk about that. Okay. Okay. We're going to talk about more of these things as we go. Now, we've got my generation, the previous generation. Anything there that might be influencing how we think? Your generation talks to people, face to face. Yeah, you got it.
I notice a lot of millennials don't have really good interpersonal skills.
The interpersonal piece. Yep. Okay.
How about just experience? Years.
Why don't you say that a little louder? That's a very valid one.
Just experience, more years doing something.
Right. So they're almost the elders in some ways. They've got all those years of experience. Yeah. Very, very true. Experience develops that muscle, that brain muscle. Did I see one more hand come up?
I think that commitment is sometimes a problem, too. People of my generation would work on something and see it through, but I find that commitment among the younger people is a problem.
Okay. Commitment. Okay. Excellent. Mm-hmm.
I think my generation and older, we were taught to be more independent, think things through, and do it. Now they seem to be more sheltered, and we don't want them to move out of the house. We want to take care of them longer.
Okay.
So they're not accepting the responsibility.
Got it. Okay. Okay. I'm going to add one more but I'm just going to plant the seed and then have you guys kind of brew on it for the rest. And that is, we've got, if you're an older generation, you're either a post-war baby or a post-post-war baby. You might be a coal mining family, and that has an influence. Okay? So we're going to touch on that, how that might have impacted how we see business compared to how the millennials see business. You're a pre-war baby. I would like to interview you. What company are you with? What company are you with?
Oh, I'm a retired physician.
Okay, I want to talk to you. That would be a good conversation. All right. Okay, so here are some of the factors that influence how the brain gets developed. And so you can look at this and sort of compare culturally, how did each generation grow up given these factors? So let's just talk about stress. I think some people here, maybe it was you. So stress impacts the brain. The other piece that impacts the brain is how you manage stress. Not just stress, some stress is healthy for the brain. It's all in how you manage it. Okay? So the millennials grew up with a little bit of a different way in how they manage stress compared to the previous generations. Okay? We've got things such as, you've got your nurture versus your nature. The culture. When I say leadership, in this case, we could talk about parents, how parents raised you. Interpersonal. What's the interpersonal dynamic? Education. All these factors go into it. Okay? Okay, so with that as our beginnings, we're going to look at sort of how the brain developed. Let's now talk about millennial integration in terms of the challenges. So you're here because you know just as well as I do what the challenges are. We've got retention. There is a stat that I read that 80% of millennials expect to leave their job within 3 years. Actually, I read one stat that was 93, but I couldn't believe it, so I found another stat that said 80, and I'm like, okay, maybe that's a little bit more realistic. So we've got workplace confusion. Not sure how to work with this. How do I work with this? We've got stress, morale, tension, conflict. Okay? A sense of being unseen, unheard, misunderstood. Okay? We've got productivity, performance issues. And yet at the same time, we know that millennials bring a profound value to the workplace. Okay? They have something my generation does not have, nor does the previous generation have. I've coached one-on-one millennials, and they blow me away. Like, they humble me. They get insights that taken me years to get. They'll get in a few months. I'm like, how do you do that? I'm so jealous. It's just their brains have developed in a certain way that has given them the ability to think very differently and on their feet. They're very entrepreneurial. And when they grab something that they want, they will go for it. Now, that's my perception. That's my experience. But it's how to craft that. Okay? Of course, we know that they're tech savvy. A lot of them have this ethical reasoning because of social media. They see a lot more stuff regarding environmental struggles, regarding ethical considerations. And so their mind thinks that way a little bit more than the previous generations. I never grew up with any courses on ethical reasoning until I went and did my PhD. It just wasn't something we thought of. We need this kind of skill set, especially the entrepreneurial aspects, in our changing business environment. And in addition, we all know there are future leaders. We can't exactly go, okay, I'm not going to hire you guys, I'll hire others. They're it. They're future leaders. So we need to find a way to be able to better relate to ourselves interpersonally with millennials and have millennials better relate to themselves in relationship interpersonally with the older generation. So how do we do that is the question. Okay. So we know that integration of millennials is going to make us more successful in businesses, if not the most successful. I perceive the better we get at millennial integration, those are the companies that will far out succeed. It's just obvious. there are more and more coming in. We need to figure out a way to actually make it work. Okay. So here we go. So why is millennial integration so hard? I'm going to give you 3 reasons. I would add a couple of more, but I want to keep it simple. I don't know why it does this. Anytime I use a different computer, it seems to not want to give me 1, 2, 3s. It just says 1, 1, 1. Okay, so we're going to talk about 3 things. You guys have already touched on. You guys touched on 2 of the 3 things. Did you know that already? Relationship. I heard a couple of people. You said connection. Someone else touched on it too. I can't remember, but they used a different word. What was the word? Do you remember? I can't even remember who said it. Was it you? Who said it? Comparison, kind of, with communication. Was it communication? Okay, yep. So relationship, this is the connection piece. Okay. Resiliency, we're going to talk about that. Okay. That kind of stick-to-itness, the ability to bounce back from stress. Okay. And then we're going to talk about rest versus action. So first one, relationship. The older generations tended to gain a sense of relationship through work. For some, I know for myself, and I definitely, if I think about my father, his almost second family was his work family. Even for me, some of my best friends. I just moved here 2 years ago, and I still sob over my work family back where I used to live. I adored them. They very much a lot of bonding, a lot of connections. Okay. Now this is very much raised into the minds of men in my generation and previous generations is you go to work to show your commitment, to express your sense of relationship to your spouse and your kids. Okay? You go to work so you can put food on the table. Okay? It's about relationship. Okay? For the millennials, that's not there anymore. They don't have that sense of commitment to go to work for those reasons. One, they have their devices. They have their family, their friends in their pocket at all times. So there's less of a need to make that connection with you. Okay? So they can come here, take a look. It's going to go off on a tangent. Stop that. In addition, there was one other piece there. Right. Gender roles have changed. So there's not that same sense I'm going to get up in the morning, go to work, so I can provide for my family. Okay. Now you top that off as well. To me, that's just enough. But also on top of that, you've got workplace engagement is also suffering because of the inability to promise long-term employment. We can't do that any longer. Downsizing, stability of business markets, focus on short-term results and long-term results. So what happens is that relational sense of trust, that I trust in you, you trust in me, that sense of trust in leadership, not there anymore. So not only do you have a lessening in the bonding and the connection and that sense of commitment in going to work, but you also don't have a strong sense of trust in where you're working and in your leadership. So, as a result of these relational factors, that relational sense of trust, that relational sense of bonding and connection with people in the workplace, right? Leaders, us in the older generations, we have less influence, we have less power, we have less authority over the millennial generation. AKA, we have less control over them. Okay? We can't say, do this. Can't do that. That connection, the bonding's not there. There's nothing to hold on to. I just go find another job. Okay? Now here's the good thing. I'm going to stand over here because it's really cold over on that side. So I'm going to take a break. Come over here. So thankfully, we do have a new leadership paradigm that is emerging. Okay? Now, I don't know if it's coincidental with the fact that we're having these challenges with millennial integration, I don't know. But there is so much science, brain science, on things such as social intelligence. We're starting to begin to understand that the brain is a social organism is a social organ, okay? In fact, they're starting to recognize that, should I ask this as a question? Is that food and shelter may not be our primary motive. Can you believe it? Food and shelter not our primary motive? What's our primary motive? If food and shelter is not our primary motive, what would it be? Human connection. Why? Why would socialization, human connection be our primary motive? Think survival. You guys got it. If we are together, we can do more together than we can do on our own. We survive better in community. So if we can move towards connection, relationship, social intelligence, we will be better able to feed ourselves and each other. Okay? So they've kind of started to switch it. And so now the leadership paradigm is starting to switch and recognizing that it's less about the leadership as an individual and their sense of authority, their sense of appeal, their sense of strengths and influences and how to get their employees to get to a place of yes, boss. And instead, it's more about how do I, as a leader, facilitate a we that is smarter than the me. Okay? That's what it's starting to become about. How, as leaders, can we cultivate the capacities within ourselves to support more social intelligence within our own self and within each other? So what shows up is two things within the organization. One is a sense of collective emergence and becoming, a sense of organizational development, and a sense of organizational belonging. Because as a we, especially with the millennials, they want to feel a sense of belonging. They want to feel a sense of belonging. Okay? And they want to feel a sense of becoming, a sense of development, a sense of purpose, a sense of contribution. And that's where the leadership paradigm is going anyways. So it kind of is win-win. Okay? Anything else I want to share on that? Yes. If this kind of shift in how leadership paradigm is of interest to you. I'm just looking. Is Larry Batten here? He's not here. I'm doing the Small Business Administration is sponsoring a free webinar on leadership development on April 20th, and that I'll be co-facilitating with Larry if you want to go further into this. Okay? So it'll be a 1-hour free workshop. Yes. So what that means is you get to kill two birds with one stone. This is the brilliant thing that millennials are bringing to light within organizations. They're saying, hey, if you figure out a way to incorporate us into the workplace better, guess what? It's not just about a millennial integration. It's about totally reinventing your organizations so you can really optimize your organization. Optimize it in a perspective of having people really want to come to work, really want to support the innovation of the organization and its sense of belonging within the community and within the market that they exist within. Okay? So in other words, you get to have your cake and eat it too. This isn't really about millennial integration. This is far beyond that. And millennials are just bringing light to it. Okay? So that's relationship. Next one. Resiliency. Resiliency is that ability to stick to something, that sense of grit. Resiliency is that ability to bounce back from stress. Okay? And here's the kicker. According to the American Psychological Association, millennials experience more stress than any other generation. You think this might have an impact on how they behave and function and think in the workplace? Yeah. So this is going to affect their ability to stick to it. This is going to affect their ability to bounce back from stressful times. Okay? This is going to affect their ability to hear constructive feedback. Okay? So why is stress so high in millennials? Okay. Now I want to say something I should have said in the beginning, but I forgot. I'm talking about generalizations. I've met millennials that are like workhorses and they can handle stress no problem. And yet I've also met a profound amount of millennials that really struggle with stress. Okay. So why is stress so high in millennials? Relationship. Okay. We touched on this. Families are starting to be more nuclear and siloed, as opposed to, communities helping families grow. Okay? Play. All right, here's an interesting one with play. Play has changed. How has play changed? See, I can't not engage you guys. This is like...
It's become sort of safer, like, for example, we couldn't go outside and run up the street, our parents always wanted to know where we were.
Yes, that's a good one. So it's become safer. Yep. So in order to protect our children from being hurt when they play, where do we put them? In front of the TV. Yeah. In front of the video games. Mm-hmm. Yep. So NASA did a study. Millennials were coming out into the workplace, and NASA, they typically hire the most brilliant of the brilliant. So they're coming out of these schools, and they're noticing something, the millennials, is their sense of ability to have very grounded, pragmatic innovation skills, not quite there. Their ability to manage their stress levels, not quite there. And they did a study. They tracked it back to changes in play when they were children compared to previous generations. My generation, previous generation, how did we play? Risky. Yeah, maybe a little too risky. Yep. Outside in groups. Okay. So, children, guess how one of the primary ways that they manage stress? What do? They sulk. But what are they doing? They're moving their bodies, right? They're like all over the map. We're always telling them, stop that. Okay? They move stress through their bodies, through singing and blah, 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 blah. They're in their sandcastles and they're building stuff. They're in their imagination. They're moving their bodies. They're all over the place, right? Expression through voice, through bodies, through imagination. Okay? That's how children work stress through. That's how the brain develops in children, is through play. Now, if you have a millennial generation that grew up more with technology, more with video games, they're not moving their body, and they're not in their imagination to the same degree. Okay? So that's going to impact two things: their creativity and their ability to manage stress. Make sense? So then we got technology. In a lot of cases, rituals, structured rituals, such as family dinner, have gone away. So for example, one of the things I hear from companies is they don't show up for meetings. Well, if you don't have that structured rituals at home as you grew up, it's kind of hard to show up with them at work. Okay? It's just disorienting. It's just not familiar. There's an instant sense of gratification. You can look something up on the internet very, very quickly. So that sense of grit of, I got to go to the library to take out a book, and then I got to walk home, uphill both ways, right? All that, yeah, and then I got to read it. And then if it's the wrong book, I got to go back to the library and get another book. All that's gone. Okay? So there's more of this sense of instant gratification. In addition, someone I think touched on it, is social media kind of gives you the sense that you can have anything you want within like 6 months or less. Lose 30 pounds in 30 days, right? And so there's this awareness of how long things take. Can kind of a little bit be skewed, especially if you add to it what you had said. If you're coming into things and you don't have the experience. Right? Now, I also want to add a couple more things to add to the resiliency piece. Is the musical chairs example. So there's a book called The Self-Esteem Trap that came out when the millennials were growing up. And the self-esteem trap was this warning to teachers, the education system. What happened is the education system started removing a lot of activities where children failed, such as musical chairs. No, everyone has to have a chair. No one could fail, okay? Everyone got a participatory award, okay? No one failed. So what happens if you're not allowed to fail? They don't know how to lose. And if you don't know how to lose, what happens? You don't know how to learn. I saw on Facebook, me and my social media, I saw a Facebook post that said, good judgment comes from experience. Experience comes from failure, right? So we've got to fail and have bad judgment, or we have to have bad judgment and fail to get experience. And through the experience of failing, we get good judgment. And that was taken away. That was robbed of them. And guess what generation did that? Yeah. What did we do? We kind of sheltered them and protected them, right? Yeah. So that's going to impact your stress levels, obviously, right? Because failure is stressful. But so if you're not allowed to fail, you can't experience stress to know how to manage it. And here's another example, baby chick example. So they did a study on baby chicks. And you have two groups. They had a third group. We don't have to talk about third group just for time's sake. Dang it, I'm already, holy cow. Okay. I got to speed up. Okay, baby chick example. So they had one group of baby chicks that got everything in the world. Food, shelter, everything provided for them. Another group of baby chicks, they had things provided for them, but then they induced some stress. They would pick up the baby chicks and hold the baby chicks. And when the baby chicks want down, they wouldn't let them down for a couple of seconds, right? And then they let them down. And then guess what the baby chicks did? What did children do? They move. So the baby chicks flop it out, shake, 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 okay? And then they do the same thing. They pick up the baby chicks, hold them for a bit. When they want to leave, when they want to get out, they wouldn't let them out, and they drop them. Which group did better? The one that was given everything for them, everything handed to them, or the group that had a little bit of stress and tension? The stress and tension. Yeah, and we robbed the millennials of that. Okay, so that's number two. Number one, relationship. Okay, number two, resiliency. Number three, rest versus action. We're going to pick on the older generation a little bit. So older generation, when I talk about rest versus action, it's the go pedal of the nervous system versus the stop pedal. In the older generations, we kind of have our foot stuck on the go pedal. Non-stop go, do, go, go, go. And then at night, we'll eat some ice cream or have a beer and watch TV to attempt to slow down the nervous system. And then we'll get up in the morning and we'll do the same thing. Drink our coffee and like slam on the gas and we just keep going. Hold our breath. Okay? So that's the older generation. We're stuck on a go. And it's very hard to get the pedal off. Okay? Now, compare that to the X-gens, the millennials. Or sorry, not X-gens, Y-gens. They tend to be go stop. They got their foot on the gas pedal. Oh, let me go check my email. Gas pedal. Oh, look at that. Oh. Gas pedal. Oh, right? Go stop, go stop, go stop. So, what happens if you have a goer and you can't get it off, right? And then you have a go, 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 and you bring them into the same organization. There's going to be some frustration, and they can dysregulate each other even more, okay? So then you have these polarized cultures. Now guess who's going to, out of those two goers, and go stop, go stop, go stop, Which one's going to be the bully? The goer. What do you think the goer is going to do? Why don't you do things the way I tell you to do it? Let's go. Okay? And what do you think the go stoppers are going to do? Not even listen. I think I'm going to quit now. And I'll start tomorrow. Somewhere else. Yeah. So we both have issues we've got to deal with on both sides of the equation. So, yes. So that's a recap. I'm having to speed things up. I kind of got a little slow there. So, relationship. Okay? Now this is the job for leadership on learning how to cultivate new leadership skills, because the old paradigm, it's not working. Resiliency. So for resiliency, this is the work of both leadership, but it's also the work of millennials. Okay? Millennials, unfortunately, are bad. You've got to learn something you probably should have learned when you were a kid. And then rest versus action. Go versus go, stop, go, stop, go, stop. So from the go perspective, when you hear something like, well, my boss is a bully, there's so many judgments and biases towards that word bully. In some ways, you can kind of think, okay, I wonder if that person has their foot on the go pedal just a lot, like a lot. And then the millennials get accused of being too sensitive. Well, that's what happens when your nervous system is in a stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, right? And you're also being bombarded by a goer. Okay? To someone who has a go, stop nervous system, someone who is like full on go is going to feel very jarring. Like, ooh, no, get away from me. Okay? That's just what it's going to feel like. So you may not be a bully, and the millennials may not be that sensitive. But when you can bring these two together, it can feel that way. Okay? All right, so what can we do about it? Step one. So I wanted to give you very, very, very simple stuff. Okay? We can go full out complex, but we don't have that much time. And I want things that you could take away. So the first thing is, the easiest thing is to address the technocratic rituals. Okay? That's the easiest thing. Now, one of them is to leave the cell phones outside meeting doors. My hunch is this is going to be just as hard for the older generation as it is the younger generation, because we've all kind of got attached to our devices. Okay? Now, some people struggle with hearing words like subtracting something, like taking away your cell phones and leaving outside the meeting room. Another way to put that is, we're going to have more face-to-face contact. We're going to sit in a room, put your cell phones aside, come into the boardroom, and hang out for a couple minutes before the meeting starts to ask, like, hey, how's your mom going? What's going on? What'd you do this weekend? And have actually just a simple conversation with your neighbor. You know? So you take your kids to the soccer practice? Yeah. It was raining the other day, wasn't it? Yeah. This type of dynamic, even just a couple of minutes at a meeting before it starts, can help create that sense of bonding, that sense of connection, that sense of relational trust. Okay? Sometimes I'll encourage, depends on how comfortable you feel in your meetings, to bring in some laughter in the beginning of the meeting. Like, anyone have any funny stories that happened on the weekend? And then someone might have something, and then you all have a chuckle. That chuckling, that laughter, creates connection. Okay? And I think the one thing I have noticed that takes people out of their cell phone is laughter. Okay? Laughter is one of the most universal languages. And again, it comes back to that play thing. Okay? Here's another one. Turn off devices at 9 p.m. I know you can't tell your staff that, but you can always do. Maybe it's like a pre-meeting. Hey, guess what? Look, guess what I learned today? Is they've done studies on the brain. And when you have your device on after 9 o'clock, it sends off photons, right? And the brain thinks that it's still daylight out. So it does two things. One, it stops producing melatonin. You need melatonin to sleep. It also stops producing what's referred to as glia cells. Glia cells go in and help repair your brain when you're asleep. So if you're continually using your device after 9 p.m., what shows up is your brain can't repair itself in its sleep to the same degree, and you're not going to get the good sleep you need because you're not producing melatonin. So if you ever woke up and you kind of feel like you're hungover, it's like you're kind of in a brain fog, that may not be because you didn't have your coffee. It may be because you're using your device too much, and the brain can't restore itself when it's sleeping. Okay? And so what happens is, if it can't restore itself in its sleep, guess what gets impacted? Relationship. You're not going to be able to be as present in your relationships. And your resiliency. If the brain isn't able to restore itself at night, then you're going to be less able to cope with stress. Okay? The other thing to do is to provide training on how to self-monitor. Just paying attention. Okay? And why? Why is it good to pay attention? I mean, we're not paying attention to how much we're using our technology because someone is bad and wrong and they're addicted. We're paying attention because at the end of the day, we want to feel better inside. We want our brains to feel good inside. That's why. Okay, second one, provide mentorship. So healthy mentorship. So this is a focus on, for example, long-term goals. Okay? Focusing on not only the long-term goals of the millennials, but the long-term goals of the company. Right? This is very important. Where's the company going? So they can kind of get a sense of, do I want to be a part of this company long-term? Because there is so much focus on the short-term results, quarterly, bottom line, annual reports, etc., that we need to have what's going to happen in the future, long-term. Okay? And am I in alignment with that? Do I want to be a part of that? Okay. Focus mentorship on competency and relational trust and fun. Okay. Millennials, like I said, I have never seen a group so smart. I mean, the millennials have just got this brilliance to them, and it's about how to access it. So helping them recognize their own worth. Again, failure, if you are robbed from failure, guess what you're also robbed of? Self-esteem, self-worth. Because it's through failure and getting yourself back on the horse that you cultivate a sense of confidence. Okay? So that means that allowing and understanding failure. Okay? Allowing failure. Give them a project that it's okay to fail on. Right? Maybe not the $5 million project, but give them projects that it's okay to fail on. Give them projects where you can allow them the time to wrestle with it. Okay? Where they can learn, they can follow through on their goals, and make them stick with it. Right? Reverse mentorship. What that means is get them involved and engaged. Okay? Not just tell them what to do, but get them involved. Ask them for their input. Ask them questions like why. Help me understand more. Tell me more. Describe that to me. The more that you can get them involved and engaged, they will cultivate that sense of self-worth, that they matter, they belong. Encourage internal innovation. They ask questions. Because of the advent of the internet, they can get answers. So they ask questions. They ask why a lot. This is really good for innovation. They can come up with ideas. Encourage that within the organization, a sort of internal entrepreneurship. Okay? This will be really useful in terms of having them feel like they've got a spark, somewhere where they can access their creativity. Now the challenge with millennials is that sometimes that creativity is a little ungrounded, right? Because they don't have quite the experience. That's where you guys come in. That's where the older generations come in. But it'll give them a place where they can be creative. And maybe that place is in some sort of social media area, since that's where they're the experts in. Okay, third one. Older generation, take your foot off the gas pedal. That's what we need to do. And for the younger generation, learn how to, through monitoring the technocratic rituals, learn how to ease into a little bit more doing without checking your phone. Okay. I find, what I've noticed for myself, is that the millennials will have an easier job at speeding up than the older generation will slowing down. Any guesses on why? Less experience doing so. Yep, that's one reason. What else?
Younger people are more flexible.
You got it. Younger people are more flexible. They ask questions why. They're actually integrating. Because they are a yes or a stop, stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, what happens is when they stop, they reflect. Okay? They'll be go, 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 oh. And in the back of the brain, they're reflecting, they're thinking, they're asking questions like why? And it gives them more flexibility. Okay? So, and then there's one thing here as well, that why would it be harder for the older generation? Set in your ways. You're getting closer. That's actually very, very, very close. Okay, here's my word for it, but I'd love to hear if you've got a different twist on how I'm going to put this. We don't trust. We don't trust that we can take the foot off the gas pedal and our business isn't going to crumble under us, right? Anyone want to put that in a different way? And maybe I'm wrong. Let me know if I'm wrong.
My thought was that because a lot of them are motivated by fear, because they have to work so hard to get where they are, and if they stop working hard, they're going to lose something.
You got it. That's a perfect way to put it. Motivated by fear. I got to get up there and go. Right. Get going, get going, get going.
We have a sense of obligation, I think, that, you know, my family depends on me, my kids depend on me, I don't have a safety net.
You got it. Yep. That's exactly it. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's worked well, why would I change?
You guys are like, yes, exactly. It's worked well. I've got this far and been successful. Yeah. Yep. And yet, and that's the thing. So all of these, so when I suggest something like take the foot off the gas pedal and encourage something like health and wellness, like people's backs go up. It's like, are you kidding me? I'm not doing that. That's so like touchy-feely, and that's not going to make any impact. But the underlying sense is fear, obligation, not trusting. All of those things are underlying that sense of resistance to something as simple as taking off the foot off the gas pedal. Okay? So, what I recommend, and this is for the older generation, because it is working, however, it's also not working, and we can see that because the millennials are struggling to come in. And they're saying to the older generation, you guys are bullies. Okay? And because they're asking for something, a change. They're saying, hey, did you know that if you're able to regulate your nervous system a little bit better, I might actually like coming to work a little bit more? Okay. And so one way is to provide training on the bottom line impact of being able to balance your nervous system. Okay. How is that going to improve my bottom dollar? And guess how it's going to improve your bottom dollar? And this is where we'll end. Look back. All of these things. You know how much money has been thrown out the window because of these things? Even something as simple as stress management. Guess how much money has been spent on stress and stress-related illnesses in America only by companies? Companies are losing $300 billion annually because of stress and stress-related illnesses. Guess how much is being lost as a result of leadership development struggles? $360 billion annually, just in America. Guess how much is lost as a result of customer service mistakes? $80 billion. Guess how much is lost as a result of struggles to change? Flexibility is an absolute essential for organizational change. Okay? And that requires an ability to get the foot off the gas pedal. Right? 60 to 70% of organizations that go through very transformative change fail. And that statistic has been the same for 50 years, despite the increase in resources. So, beginning to explore the bottom line improvement of modulating our nervous system is a good thing. Okay, so summary. Our brains have developed differently than millennials. Millennial brains developed differently than ours. This impacts how we think and behave. So we know in the older generation, certain parts of our brain work really well, especially our gas pedal brain. Okay? And in the millennials, some parts of their brain works really well. For example, the ability to ask questions, okay? And their ability to reflect. Okay? What is the answer is it's not about fixing either generation. There's nothing to fix. I mean, ultimately, we got it all going on. It's more about just exercising the parts of the brain that kind of just didn't get exercised. Okay? And slowing down and exercising the brains that kind of got over-exercised. So, next steps. You want to learn more? Free webinar, as I mentioned earlier. It's kind of like the sequel to this presentation on February 20th through the Small Business Administration. Okay? And you can contact myself or Larry Batten for more information to get the link. All right. Oh, do we have time for questions?
Please stick around.
Okay.